Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, if you're a small business owner and you are treading water right now, you're going to want to watch this next segment because we're going to learn how to build your business capacity with an expert. That story next.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Well, I remember when I launched Real News PR in my home in 2008, I was wearing so many hats. I was the CEO, I was the head salesperson, and I also changed the ink in the printer. And as you start to grow, you start to build a team around you, and I'm so blessed to have an amazing team of just hardworking people. But there are many businesses out there struggling, and they're preparing for what could be a recession next year. And to talk about that today, Sheryl Hardin, she is with Capacity Squared. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm so excited to have you on the show because I know you have run small businesses, you've coached small businesses, and now you have a best-selling book, Building Business Capacity. Thanks for coming on the show, and give our viewers some advice. If they're struggling right now, what are some things that they should be looking at?
Well, my background is in operations and processes. I've been working in change management for 30 years. For small businesses like yours, you know that change is the thing. Mm-hmm. If you're growing, you're changing. And so the ability to put together a process so that you can change in a positive direction is key to getting through both difficult times and wonderful times when you've had amazing growth. If your infrastructure is not big enough to hold up your business, then as you grow, you start to have more chaos and more problems, and you might even topple over and fail at the time when it looks like you're doing the best you've ever done. So by organizing your processes, by creating orderly change, you grow at a rate that's healthy, that's good for both your employees and your business.
Absolutely, and we're going to put on the screen your book cover. It's a beautifully designed book, Building Business Capacity. Tell us why you wrote the book.
So I've been working for years with a program called 10,000 Small Businesses, where I have the privilege of coaching small business owners in the area of operations and processes. The program is grant funded by Goldman Sachs. People who decide to be in the program get a seminar in every single area of business in order to create a 5-year growth plan. We do that all in a 4-month period of time, which means that you're drinking from a fire hose week after week after week. And when business owners get out and they start to try to implement everything they've been told to do, they have questions. And I get questions all of the time. And so I wanted to take the time to answer. We've given them the answer to what. Now I wanted to give them the answer to how. The answer to all those questions that come up after. Because even if you haven't been through that program, if you're a small business owner, you are good at the thing that you started your business about. Doesn't mean that you're good at every area of business because, I mean, who is?
Sure.
When you're very small, you can't hire the people who will sort of provide scaffolding and do the things you don't do well. You have to do it all yourself, just like you did. But even as you grow, if you don't know enough about that area of business, you don't know how to hire somebody who will do it well for you.
You were telling me a great story before we went on. Would you share that with the viewer?
Sure. So I had a client years ago who was going to do a merger with a company that was almost just like them. They were competitors. They'd shared employees back and forth, and they were sure that they were very similar. And so we talked about my coming in to help them manage the change of the merger, of taking the two companies and making them one. They didn't feel like they needed that support, which was great. I went on, they went on. About a year later, I got a call, and as I'm walking through the office to go to my meeting, I'm being introduced to people. Now, the company had renamed itself, so let's just call them Company C. But as I'm being introduced, people voluntarily tell me which of the old companies they were from. So they say, I'm Joe Smith from Company A, and I'm Sally Sue from Company B. Nobody said the new name. Wow. Nobody had in their brain assimilated that they were now this new company. And so I went in to have a chat and said, the merger doesn't seem to be going well. And they said, no. What had happened is that each department had broken off into a silo. So if your department had Company A people, they only had Company A people. If they had Company B people, they only had Company B people. R&D was given a really nice budget to create a new product. And they went out and talked to the customer, and they built exactly what they wanted. But they didn't talk to marketing because they didn't like marketing. And they didn't talk to legal because they didn't like legal. So it was back in the days of paper. The catalog of new products came out. The product wasn't in it.
Wow.
Turned out to be a good thing, because when legal took a look at it, it was illegal to sell in 36 states.
Wow.
And they'd spent $1 million, their entire R&D budget.
Wow, it's amazing how very smart people can have blind spots. And so I'd like you to weigh in on Elon Musk. I mean, one thing that has been exposed is that it looks like Twitter was fairly bloated. I mean, catered meals and employees not even using the food. And he cleaned house. Twitter hasn't completely collapsed. I think 75% of the staff is gone. What are your thoughts? If Elon, if you're watching, I want you to listen to this. Well, what do you think about the way he came in like a bull in a china shop?
Well, so what happens when you take over a company and you're sure you know the plan, you often find out that you aren't welcome, your ideas are not welcome, you don't understand the culture. And I think that's what Elon's going through. It's not that some of the changes he's making didn't need to be made. To get rid of the bloat's not unusual in a small, quickly growing organization, and Twitter grew from 10 people to 7,500 in a very short period of time. Those extra perks that you use to attract employees when you're very small, like free food, expensive coffee, toys in the break room, those are great when you're small. But handling the cost of those as you grow and grow and grow gets to be really hard. So now your infrastructure is different than the size of your company. The challenge that Elon has is that he is a very conservative person going into a very liberal culture. And it appears, at least on the outside, that he's come to educate them. He is educating them. He is not listening to them. He is bringing a work ethic from the car industry that isn't part of the social media industry. And when you do that so quickly, there is the chance that it could all fall apart. There needs to be some softening. A whole lot of conversations about where the business is going to go, how it's going to grow, what the future looks like, with as much listening as there is talking.
Wow, you're a very wise person. You're also a very popular speaker. I'm going to show a page. This comes from a speaker website, I believe. Anyway, let's talk about some of your topics. What are you being called on to speak about these days?
So in the area of small business, there's just so many things that we can chat about. I love to chat about business capacity. I'm often called to talk about operations, to talk about how to build useful processes. One of my favorite conversations to have with people is how to speak so you can be heard. I also teach people how to write so people can follow your instructions. There's actually a science behind that, because it turns out adults don't learn exactly like children.
Yes.
And I like to work with business owners who are very serious and ready to build their company. They're on that cusp of they're very small now, but they want to get to mid-size really soon.
Right.
And they're not looking to be a giant overnight, because healthy growth happens over time. And so I love to talk about what healthy growth looks like.
Yes. You also had a story about a magnet.
Yes. I learned so much from living the magnet story. Right after I got out of college, I was invited to be a part of a team, and this gentleman wanted to sell his company. And he made magnets that used to go inside speakers, and that's what would reverberate the sound. And so I was called in to work with the engineers. It turned out he'd been trying to sell the company for a long time and hadn't gotten any offers. His entire production team was from Laos and didn't speak much English. They were all reaching retirement age. They hadn't documented a single thing they did. So, no shocker that people were lining up to buy the company. And so they sent me out onto the floor to find out what people actually did. I came back with my first 3 processes. The first one they looked at and said, "We don't do that. We can't do that. It's an EPA violation." And I looked at them and said, "Then you should stop." They looked at the second one, and again they said, "We don't do that. But it's okay, we can do it that way." And they got to the third one, and you can guess what they said. "We don't do that." But then one of the engineers got very excited and jumped up and said, "But we should." Turns out the industry's biggest problem in making magnets is that when you fire them like clay pots, they break. The person I followed had added 2 steps to the process, and his magnets broke much less often. And so what we did was we took that process and we patented it, because it wasn't his biggest problem, it was the industry's biggest problem. And now that he had what I call a book of business, all the processes documented, if you brought in a brand new team tomorrow, they could run the show, and you don't need the owner anymore because we've gotten everything out of his head. He was able to sell the company for 4 times what he was asking in a bidding war.
Wow, I can see why you're so popular on the speaking circuit and why your book is doing so well. We're going to end with your website, not your website, we're going to end with LinkedIn. Let's put that up on the screen. And Sheryl Hardin, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here.
You bet. That's it for now. We'll see you next time.